Over the last week, we've been talking about Simon Kinberg, who signed a deal with Lucasfilm to write the next Star Wars trilogy. But the writing's been on the wall for a long time. Lucasfilm is pretty much clueless when it comes to what they're doing with the Star Wars franchise on the big screen. And today, it just got so much worse. The Hollywood Reporter has spoken to sources close to the franchise, and they've dropped an absolute bombshell. We now know what Lucasfilm's long-term plan is, and unsurprisingly, it is so out of touch with Star Wars fans and what Star Wars fans want. The article reveals confusion within the studio, conflict, and so much more. This is shocking. I'm sorry to sound negative, but this is really awful news. So let's get into it. According to sources, Rey is set to play a role in several movies that are being developed. It seems like Lucasfilm has decided she is the future of the franchise. This is not going to sit well with Star Wars fans. There's the Sharmina Bates-Chanoy movie, the Sean Levy movie, and the Simon Kinberg trilogy. And for whatever reason, Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm have decided they should all center around different iterations of Rey. And you know, on the face of it, if there was a rationale behind it, if Lucasfilm said, look, 7, 8, and 9 was not a consistent story. Fans had issues with X, Y, and Z. It's time to make this right. So what we're going to do is essentially a reset for Rey. We're going to explore what she's like as a Jedi Master. The First Order is dead. Palpatine is gone for good. Let's give fans a new portion of the timeline. Rey is a Jedi Master, and there are all of these Padawans, one of which, or, as the rumor said, 2 of which, are going to progress this story forward. But that's not what they're saying. The sources mentioned internal deliberation within Lucasfilm as to what to do next. And the main quote given to the Hollywood Reporter is this: according to Lucasfilm, Rey is the most valuable cinematic asset, in some ways maybe the only one that Star Wars has right now. Despite the baffling question as to how they came to this conclusion, it seems to me a very linear way of thinking. We've just got to continue after episode 9. There are so many other characters they themselves have set up that have far greater futures that fans would want to see. Omega, Ahsoka, Grogu, Din, Thrawn, in the War of the New Republic. You can do more with some of the Andor characters. Why is Lucasfilm saying that Rey is the most valuable cinematic asset? Is there something I'm missing? And as you're going to see in just a second when we get into the nitty-gritty of it, their reasoning is insane. Spoiler warning, they're running out of ways to appeal to fan nostalgia. Those aren't my words. That's what the sources told the Hollywood Reporter. Our good friend Star Wars Only put it best when he said, they're going to kill any momentum with this. I'm sorry, but Rey is not Luke. She's not even close to him in popularity. We need new stories and characters, but putting her in all the new movies is too much. And don't worry, we will talk about Luke, and generally on the subject of legacy characters. It might sound unpopular, but what about a Darth Vader series that explores a live-action version of some of the comics, especially in the early Imperial reign, that just focuses on Vader's struggles? Again, I know that's not going to be popular. Some fans will say, well, episodes 1 to 6 are all about Darth Vader, why would you need more? But I'm just saying, even that idea to me is better than 5 more Rey movies. The Hollywood Reporter goes on to write this: Star Wars movie development has been under scrutiny for several years, with Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy taking fire for not developing meaningful characters beyond those first created by Lucas. And if the franchise looks forward in its canon timeline, all those beloved characters, Luke, Leia, Vader, Obi-Wan, Yoda and Han Solo, are dead or had their storylines wrapped in prequels or spin-offs. And you know guys, they had their chance to give us a reunion between Luke, Leia and Han in the sequel trilogy and they missed it. One source told the Hollywood Reporter, the closet is a little bare at Lucasfilm. They're more or less creatively bankrupt. And here's another bombshell. Some Lucasfilm directors are aware of what others are working on, while others are not. And there is some creative conflict in the studio by the sounds of it. Different voices wanting different creative directions. One insider says, quote, it's a different way of development. You're being asked to create the New Testament, adds another one, who worked on previous Star Wars movies. And no one can agree on anything, and there's a lot of second guessing about meanings. I mean, Star Wars fans have been saying this for years. It's interesting they also mention there is a lot more clarity on the spin-off side. With the live-action Disney Plus shows, Lucasfilm seem to know what to do. It's the movie side they can't seem to create a cohesive plan on. Another source familiar with the process is more business-minded, noting Star Wars is a nostalgia-based enterprise, and they're running out of ways to create nostalgia. They shouldn't need to rely on that. How difficult is it to say, we're going to run with a brand new idea, whether it's far in the future beyond the rise of Skywalker, whether it's, like I mentioned, Dawn of the Jedi by James Mangold, and have one movie as the building block and build outwards, create a mini-saga within the franchise. But instead, it seems like the leadership at the studio really wants to bank on Rey. She's slated to feature in at least 5 upcoming movies. I mean, talk about being so out of touch. Don't get me wrong, Daisy Ridley is great. The character of Rey could have more promise, especially when it was just one spin-off movie, but to say the entire franchise depends on this one character most fans really didn't vibe with, that seems like the most bizarre, counterproductive decision Disney and Lucasfilm could make. I'm honestly gobsmacked. Then they write, the television side doesn't appear to have the same problems. As several insiders note, that arm has a lot more freedom to expand Lucas's universe, which is why there's been a varied slate that runs, for better or for worse, the gamut from Andor to The Acolyte, as well as a corner for Ahsoka creator Dave Filoni, the chief creative officer at Lucasfilm. And I think on the TV side, the 2 positives that Lucasfilm has going for it are the second seasons of Ahsoka and Andor, and I'm getting the sense they're scared to take risks. Because listen, The Acolyte I really didn't like, but it wasn't because it was trying to do something different. Lucasfilm shouldn't be afraid to keep trying to push the envelope with new characters and new time periods. They seem willing to take the risk for TV shows, some of which cost an absolute fortune, but they don't seem willing to take the same risk when it's the theatrical stuff. Why not? One of the insiders comments on this very confusing attitude saying this: to make standalone movies, or continuing the Skywalker saga in any form, is a fundamental question the company faces as it tries to move forward. But I have 2 questions. Why is this a difficult choice? A. And B. Why are these the only 2 options? Why does it have to be such an extreme dichotomy? If standalone movies do well, and fans really take to those stories such as Rogue One, which spawned Andor, why can't future standalones be the building blocks of more stories after them? And why do they need to continue the Skywalker saga? Yes, nostalgia is a huge part of being a Star Wars fan, but if they're talking about the future of Star Wars, they need more than that. When you botch a character's story, or don't do them justice, there's no real coming back from that, unless you make a massive U-turn. You listen to the fans, you take on board the feedback, and you say we're going in a new direction. After everything, Lucasfilm is still not taking that advice. Despite everything we've seen, how fans gave a very meh response to the Star Wars Celebration announcement about the Rey standalone, you'd think they'd be planning more around the Tony Gilroy side, or even more with Dave Filoni. I would say Ahsoka is a much better face for the franchise going forwards than Rey. The Ahsoka series could be the beginning, which of course is a spin-off of Mando, but then you can branch out into a new adaptation of, I don't know, Heir to the Empire, you can introduce the Yuuzhan Vong, bring back the Grisk, do so much with Thrawn. That in and of itself could spawn 2 trilogies. But instead you have Lucasfilm saying, we're relying on Rey, she is the future, she needs to be the face of this franchise. I don't know what the logic is behind this. And this isn't a case of a tiny outlet saying this. It's the Hollywood Reporter with multiple sources, some of them close to Lucasfilm. They understand the creative process there. A couple of them were involved in the movies. They got a good feel of the temperature in the room. They're saying there is such a lack of a cohesive direction. And one more worrying thing seems to be their comment on the Mandalorian and Grogu, because my hope was that this is going to reinvigorate fans of the show, those who wanted to see Din and Grogu on the big screen, to bring them back. And how many times have we speculated that could spawn its own trilogy? But this article is saying it's an experiment. I fully believe they expect to bring Mando back to the small screen afterwards. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. I promise you my next video is going to be much more positive. If you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.